After you got your purpose, target audience, tone and theme nailed down, you are ready to write down the script. Here are some great guidelines in writing the story. Write interesting, believable characters. Good stories require relatable characters that the viewer will remember long after they finish the story. First, give your main character a memorable introduction, and in doing so you'll ensure a good beginning for your story as well. Remember that one's actions say more about them than their words, so always try to show rather than tell. An active character who shows their qualities, good or bad, from the outset is far more memorable and dynamic than one who just stands there and talks. Second, give your main characters unique qualities and flaws that will make them complex and interesting characters. No one wants to see a perfect person. We all have our quirks and vulnerabilities, and your characters should too. Third, ensure your characters undergo some kind of development or change throughout the story. We grow and learn from our experiences, and your characters should also. Fourth, be consistent with your characterizations. If you establish early on that your protagonist is shy and introverted, don't have them boldly approaching strangers later on in that scene. These tips will ensure that you create memorable characters with flaws and dimensions, not just one-dimensional caricatures. Include various types of conflict. All interesting stories need conflict. Without it, there is no drama, tension, or sense of forward momentum. Conflict drives change, and change drives story. The conflict can be internal, such as a character struggling with a difficult decision, or external, such as a character facing an obstacle, or both. What is important is that the conflict feels real and believable, and that it has a meaningful impact on both the character and the story. So make sure that you create obstacles for your characters to overcome, so that they have to struggle and grow in order to succeed. Keep a consistent through line. One of the most important aspects of writing a good story is making sure that there is a through line. A through line is the central question, or problem, that your story is trying to answer. This comes directly from the purpose of the story, and is critical for every step in the story. From the opening scene, to the closing image at the end, you must always keep it in mind. Without a consistent through line, your story will likely wander and lose focus, leaving the audience confused and uninterested. There are a few ways to ensure your through line is clear and compelling. First, ensure the through line is introduced early in the story. This will help to ensure that audience is aware of the central conflict from the beginning and will be more invested in seeing how it plays out. Additionally, be sure to maintain focus on the through line throughout the course of the story. Every scene and every event should relate back to the through line in some way, helping to move the story forward, and keeping the audience engaged. When thinking about the central problem in your story, consider the following. Who is the main character of your story? What does this character want? What are they trying to achieve? What obstacles will they have to overcome? What inner flaws hold them back? Your story should be focused on your character's journey to reach their goal. Raising the stakes for your characters. When you write stories, one of the key elements is to keep upping the stakes for your characters. This means that as the story progresses during the rising action, the challenges and obstacles your characters face should become more and more difficult. This will hook the audience, as they will want to see how your characters will manage to overcome these increasingly complex challenges. There are a few ways you can do this. First, is to have the stakes increase in terms of the personal costs for your characters. For instance, if they're originally trying to achieve something that would benefit themselves, you could raise the stakes so that failing to achieve their goal would also have negative consequences for other characters. Another way to up the stakes is to increase the physical dangers or threats your characters face. This could be anything from adding more dangerous opponents, to raising the stakes so that failure would mean death or severe injury. And remember that the point where the stakes are the highest, and the excitement reaches its peak, needs to be at the climax of the story. When the central conflict is settled once and for all, everything the character has gone through, and all the lessons learned since the inciting incident, must pay off in this final moment. A truly effective climax is one where the character and audience, both, genuinely don't know if the protagonist will succeed. That can only be achieved by raising the stakes and difficulty throughout the story. As you raise the stakes for your main character, consider the following. What happens if your character fails? What is at stake if they succeed? What is the character willing to trade or give up to reach their goal? The higher the stakes, the more suspenseful and exciting your story will be. Whatever approach you take, remember that giving your main characters many obstacles during the rising action is essential for writing a good story. Effective dialogue. Good dialogue is an essential element of any story. It conveys a character's personality, it advances the plot, and provides crucial information to the audience. Here are some tips to help you write dialogue that will keep your audience engaged. Make sure your dialogue sounds natural. Your characters should sound like real people. Use dialect and colloquialism sparingly. While they can add color to your dialogue, too much can be difficult for the audience to follow. Keep your dialogue brief. Long blocks of uninterrupted speech can be tedious to listen to. Instead, break up your dialogue with action and save the speeches for when they matter the most. Be aware of pacing. The rhythm of your dialogue should match the pace of your story. If your story is fast-paced, your dialogue should be as well. Avoid exposition dumps and on-the-nose speeches. Let your dialogue move the plot forward, while also revealing character personality traits. The best dialogue is loaded with subtext. Show, don't tell. This is a technique used by writers that allows the audience to experience the story through action in conjunction with their own thoughts and feelings, rather than through exposition dialogue or voiceover. In other words, you're not hitting the audience over the head with on-the-nose dialogue. In layman's terms, it means watching a character doing something and understanding the story through their actions, instead of having the character tell you that same thing. For example, instead of a character saying, "I'm sad," they demonstrate that emotion by walking with his head down while everyone around him is happy. Instead of a character declaring, "I'm a firefighter," you show that character wearing firefighting gear and emerging from a blazing building. We would much rather deduce that a character hates her boss by seeing her making disrespectful faces at him behind his back, than a long expositional dialogue on how she hates him. We'd prefer to learn how the Matrix works by seeing Morpheus and Neo fight Matrix style in the dojo, as opposed to hearing Morpheus explain the details to him. A good story needs tension and suspense. A good story needs tension and suspense in order to keep the audience engaged until the end. One way to create tension is by introducing conflict early on in the story. This can be done by having the protagonist face off against an antagonist, or by having them come up against a challenging situation. It is also effective for character development, as early conflict gives us insight into the character's flaws, and how they need to change for the better in order to succeed later. Another way to create tension is by building up to the climax, which should be a pivotal moment in the story that changes everything for the characters. This can be done by withholding information, gradually revealing information about the characters or the plot, or by raising the stakes throughout the course of the story. Remember, tension and suspense are not about revealing information, but withholding it until the last possible moment. A great story requires good pacing. Pacing is defined as how fast or how slowly the action unfolds in the story. A well-paced story will have moments of high action, balanced with slower moments of reflection or character development. If everything happens too quickly, the audience may get overwhelmed and lose interest. If things are happening too slowly, they may get bored. Finding the right balance between action and reflection will keep the audience invested in both the memorable characters and plot. Every element of your story should serve a purpose and advance the plot in some way. The plot should be carefully structured so that each scene leads logically to the next, even when taking into account surprises and unexpected developments. The pacing should be varied throughout the story, with some faster-paced sections to break up the monotony, and some slower-paced sections to allow for moments of reflection. The dialogue should be sharp and snappy, without any unnecessary pauses or meandering conversations. Your story should always be moving forward. There should never be a scene that feels like it could be cut without affecting the rest of the story. Create a memorable ending. Creating a memorable ending is one of the most important aspects of the story writing process. While a great beginning is crucial to the story, it is the ending that will define if the story is successful or not. The ending needs to be definitive and satisfying, while providing a sense of satisfying closure for the audience. To achieve this, the ending must be well planned and executed with precision. First, identify the story's climax. This is the point at which the conflict is resolved, and the tension is released. The central throw line is addressed here, and, for good or bad, the central conflict comes to an end. Then, start winding down the story by tying up loose ends and wrapping up plot threads. The pacing should slow down at this point, as the story builds toward its resolution. This is commonly referred to as the falling action section of your story. The falling action ties up all loose ends, and fill in any plot holes, and shows us how the hero's world has changed, for better or worse, as a result of their undertaking the challenge in the first place. This allows you to write an ending that feels earned and satisfying. The ending should be emotional and resonate with your audience. Whether happy or sad, it should evoke a strong reaction in the audience, and it is here that your overall purpose has been met, and you have educated, entertained, sold, or promoted your idea. This is what people will remember long after they have finished watching your story, so make it count. Don't cop out with a cheap or predictable ending, make it earned and satisfying. If done right, a good ending will leave the audience with a lasting impression of your story. Edit. Once you've finished writing, put your work away for at least 24 hours, as this will give you some much needed distance from your work, so that you can come back to it with fresh eyes later. Then, go through your work with a fine-tooth comb, and get rid of anything that isn't absolutely essential. A good story is one that has been thoroughly edited. Don't try to publish something before it's ready. After you've done your best to edit your work, the best way for you to further improve your story is to get someone else to read it and give you their constructive feedback. Doesn't matter if they're a family member, friend, or professional editor. Just so long as they're willing to be critical, and you are open to addressing any shortcomings. You need to know what's wrong with your story so you can fix it.